to the podium Gary McConnell.
I appreciate that very much. No wonder I'm tired and old. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I want to thank the Exchange Club for inviting me. It's always a privilege to come see a lot of folks that you know and folks that we have mutual friends around. And it's been a challenge. Let me give you a little background on this. It took 52 years to live it, about 5 years to write it, and I'll tell you about it in 15 minutes. So basically what I'd like to highlight for you, and we're glad to answer any questions you have at the end. But before I get started, I want to recognize Mary Beth Huish and Steve Peppers, two folks at Chattooga County High School who are working on a video project there. And y'all were kind enough to allow them to come down today and video me for whatever reason they want to do that. We'll start being elected sheriff when I was 22 years old. My dad was sheriff prior to me being, he died with a heart attack at the sheriff's office. I was elected when I was 22. A lot of moonshine, a lot of bootleggers. First year I was a deputy in 1965, we tore up 105 liquor sales in 52 weeks. And most of you know there's not enough people in Chattooga County to drink that, so I'm sure some of that was coming to Floyd. Don't know for sure, you know, but it could have been. The bootleggers, you know, they were an amazing group of people. I always looked at it as a big Easter egg hunt. They'd hide it, I'd hunt it. And some of them were pretty good folks. That's just the way they made a living. Some of them were not. A couple of them I can think of. My wife always wants me to tell the story about the old guy on Lookout Mountain that made liquor. And he found out that I was tremendously afraid of rattlesnakes. So he'd go out and catch rattlesnakes and tie them across the trail coming to the liquor still. Not a good idea. He lost that fight. But anyway, you know, moonshine is certainly a thing of the past. It went out in about early 70s, mostly when marijuana started being drug of preference. Federal government had a lot to do with putting it out because they raised the price of sugar. It wasn't law enforcement. And the bad thing about white liquor or moonshine was that what they would put in the stills in the wintertime to make the yeast work faster. Anything from horse manure to car batteries. It's pretty bad stuff. Try to move on a little bit about, you know, there was a lot of folks, there were all kinds. I know one we found over close to Silver Hill was probably the fanciest one we ever blew up. It was inside of a house, and a push button operation. The fellow had a hog operation, he'd take the yeast out and feed it to his hogs. Well, we had the brilliant idea of taking primer cord, which is used with dynamite, and just gonna cut the steel out, the end out of the steel. Not a good idea. Blew one plank off the steel and blew the house apart. So try to explain that when you're trying to pay for the house. But you know, a lot of funny things along the way. A lot of funny things. Talk a little bit about some of the murders. I'm not gonna try to get into detail on any of them. The first one I was ever involved in was two guys named Chatterton and Quisman. Some of you older guys and gals might remember they picked up a gentleman on Christmas Eve, or 2 days before Christmas, in 1965. He was coming to Berry College to pick up his son. They took him up to Haywood Valley and beat him to death with a 2x4. He was later caught in, they were later caught in Savannah. Both of those guys were eventually sentenced to the electric chair. And fast forward, and there's no way I can cover all of them. I'm going to try to cover the ones that had a little bit of more attention than the others. Move fast forward to probably one everybody always hears about, is what I call the devil worshiping Scudder and Odom up on Taylor's Ridge. Only murder I've ever worked, and I've been cussed by, call this everything you can think of in several different languages, because I got pretty vocal about the Antichrist worshiping and the things they had planned up there. Dr. Scudder was a pharmacologist from Chicago, and his lover, Joseph Odom, were looking for property that they thought would be the safest place in the country if we had a nuclear attack. where'd they come to? They came to Chattooga County, of course. built a mansion up on Taylor's Ridge on what's called a narrows road out from Trine. Built it by hand, no power, no water, no utilities, no square corners, no windows. It was really a piece of good work, but a spooky sort of place. They had a lot of parties there, a lot of rumors about them doing drugs and stuff. We had raided the place several times prior and couldn't find anything. Then they had this young couple that came over to visit with them. There was this house. There's 3 buildings there. There's a house I described, and it's what we referred to as a chicken coop, which is a 3-story wood building in the backyard. The first floor was where they kept their chickens. The second floor is where they had their vegetables and fruits and stuff stored. And the third floor is where all the fruits and vegetables went to play at night. So I'm trying to keep this as clean as I can, you know. Anyway, this couple was there. They got into it, shot Joseph Odom in the kitchen, shot him through the door. He lay dead in the kitchen. Shot Dr. Scudder. A couple strange things about that. Dr. Scudder was in the living room, bound and gagged, his hands tied behind him and a bandana around his eyes. And he had painted a self-portrait years before of himself being killed that way, hanging on the wall. Folks, you know, I guess I'm average religious. I've been in 2 places in my life that I just thought God didn't want me to be there. One of them was there, and the other was New York City, Ground Zero, the day after the explosion, after the airplanes hit his towers. Back to Scudder, they robbed him, took some clothes, took his Jeep, went on to Vicksburg, Mississippi, and killed a Navy Lieutenant, Kirby Phelps, who was on his way home to see his mother in Texas for Christmas, handcuffed him to a tree in a bovine rest area in Vicksburg, abandoned Scudder's Jeep in Louisiana, took Scudder's car, Kirby Phelps' car, and went on to Texas. They got in a fight. The 2 guys got in a fight in Texas, separated, come back, one of them got arrested in Chattanooga, Tennessee. The other one got arrested on Windy Hill in Rome, in Marietta. Unusual thing. We caught one of them about 5 days before Christmas, and you know me, you know I have a tendency to open my mouth sometimes when I should be quiet. And I made the comment to the media, well, we'll have the other one by Christmas. Thank goodness. About 10 minutes to midnight on Christmas Eve, I was home putting together a 3-wheel bicycle for my daughter at the time. And Chattanooga police called them on the Russell Boulevard. Went up and brought him back to Chattooga. That was Tony West. When we brought him back, he had on a suit that belonged to Lieutenant Kirby Phelps. Had his suit on, and had on rings and stuff that belonged to Scudder. Tried him, gave him an electric chair in Georgia, went to Mississippi, tried him out there twice, and they got the electric chair in Mississippi, and both of them are still on death row in the state of Mississippi now with hold orders for Georgia. I cannot very well describe their home on Taylor's Ridge. Like I say, had no lights, no water, a lot of stained glass windows, filthy, just absolutely filthy. And they killed both they had 2 large British Mastiff dogs. They were killed and laid around the heater in the living room. A lot of writings there about Antichrist worshiping, long-term plans for the place from what was written there. They wanted to make a halfway house out of it for Antichrist worshipers around the country, out of prisons, Angola, Attica, some of the tougher prisons around the country. Luckily, that never did happen. Like I said, we had a lot of rumors that they were making drugs, so we actually took a backhoe and dug a 10-foot trench all the way around the house trying to see if there's any hidden rooms or anything, and there was not. And later the house burned. Kind of fast forward on a little bit. This was about 4 months apart. A case that I'm sure you're familiar with here in Rome is Judith Ann and Alvin Neely. Probably one of the most heart-wrenching murder cases I've ever worked on. Was not necessarily involved with the young girl, because she was picked up here and later was found in DeKalb County, Alabama, at DeSoto State Park, pushed off the ledge by Sheriff Hal Richards. In the meantime, she had been assaulted, drugged, anything you can think of, injected with Drano before they carried her to the mountain and shot her in the back and pushed her off the cliff. In the meantime, they had also killed, well, shot two other people. One was Janice Chapman. Her body, we found her body in Chattooga County up Haywood Valley, and her husband was found in Gordon County. He lived. He's the one that gave us an idea who it was, and they were arrested in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. But like I said in the opening, I've been involved in 13 capital murder cases in my life. Not all in Chattooga, but I was involved in it because of Chattooga. By far, the meanest, coldest, hard-blooded, cold-blooded person I've ever met in my life, bar none, is Judith Ann Neely. Somebody asked me about the electric chair. And I have a tendency to say I'm opposed to the electric chair. That's unusual coming from the sheriff, old sheriff. But let me tell you why I am. I think we ought to use a couch. Get 3 at a time. You know. You may or may not agree with that. That's entirely up to you, depends on whose couch it is. But folks, we got to break the cycle. You know, I stayed in law enforcement long enough in Chattooga County, and I'm sure the sheriffs in Floyd County could tell you the same thing. I was put in the 3rd generation in jail when I left. At home now, they put the names of folks who get arrested on the radio every morning. And I look at it about once or twice a week. I don't recognize the first names. Last names are the same. We've got to get a grip on it. But Judith Ann Neely, you know, she fell in love with her attorney over in Fort Payne, a guy named Bob French. Little funny story about Mr. French. He didn't care for me a lot. We were having a hearing in Chattooga County, and Judge Loggins, who just recently died, was on the bench. And Mr. French brought his recorder in and recorded, which was against the rules in the court at the time. Next morning, the sheriff said, check him out and see if he's got a recorder on him. When he comes in, I asked him about it, and he had some few choice words to say about my parents. He didn't know them. So he was a fairly small guy, and I was in pretty decent shape back then. So I reached over and grabbed him by the ankles, picked him up and shook him, and his recorder fell out. So, you know, there's always a way to get there. Moving on, folks, I can stand here and talk to you all day about this stuff, but a couple of other funny things. You know, a lot of this stuff was funny looking back. It wasn't at the time. We had a guy one time that stole a 12 by 60 mobile home. We arrested him, found him in Rossville, Georgia, recovered the mobile home, and I was interviewing him. I said, I don't remember what his name was. I said, did you get that on Saturday or Sunday? He looked at me just as cold and as serious as he could. He said, Sheriff, you know it's against the law to pull a mobile home on Sunday. You can't make this stuff up, folks. The only other one it kind of falls in that range. There's a young man up here, I won't tell you what his name is, he's still there. We got a call from DeKalb County, Jackson County, Alabama, and said somebody stole a 15-foot flat-bottom boat. Thought he was coming to Georgia with it. He had a description of him, so I went up to his house, lived 20 somewhere on Trine. Sure enough, there was a 15-foot flat-bottom boat leaned up against the old house. I talked to him, and I said, where'd you get this boat? I got it over in Alabama, Sheriff. I said, how'd you get home with it? He said, I hitchhiked. You know, you got to be a pretty nice fella or lady to stop and pick up a guy with a 15-foot boat and get him to ride home. So moving right on to try to get to some of the other stuff, and a lot of it's serious, don't misunderstand me. But every once in a while you just had to stop and kind of walk out of the room and laugh. One of the others that you may have heard about a good bit in Floyd County is when there's a youth home over at Silver Hill, Campanata. young man died up there, and we got pretty vocal about it, and finally Governor Harris closed it down, and I talked enough to get sued for $30 million over it, but you know, we won, so that's all part of it. But it was an outdoor camp. You couldn't put a death row inmate in. That's how cruel it was. They let the boy lay there on the floor and die because he wouldn't call a doctor for him. Moving on, the last murder case that I worked in Chattooga before I left was the day I decided I needed to leave. Two elderly ladies lived out in Chattoogaville on the Georgia-Alabama line. Their sister found them. They lived next door to a little Baptist church, Sardis Baptist Church, where I used to play Santa Claus. I always go to their house and change clothes. This guy had gone over there, tied them up, beat them to death with electric iron. I beat one of them to death with electric iron, and tied both of them up and left. Elrod, little sisters, Miss Gertie Elrod. And I got there. You know, we're not as fortunate in Chattooga as y'all are in Florida to have a lot of police and sheriff's folks running around. Sheriff actually has to work up there. With no disrespect to the folks down here. But it's different. You know, it's different. We don't have a county police. So went in and picked Ms. Elrod up, and I picked her up and put her on the stretcher and asked her what he looked like. And she told me. And said he lives across the road. I went across the road, sent a deputy to go to the back door, and that one really got to me, because these are 80-year-old ladies, never bothered anybody in their life. I told the deputy, I said, if I'm not the first one out the back door, kill him. And luckily the guy was gone, and we got a good lookout on him, caught him in about 8 hours in Hazard County, Kentucky, and went and got him and brought him back and convicted him for murder there. 2 stories about that I want to tell you, besides how horrible the murder was. The other one was when we tried him. I pushed Ms. Elrod in the courtroom. They changed venue and carried it to Walker County. I pushed her in the courtroom, and Gerald was sitting there. And she tagged me on the arm, and I leaned over, and she said, "Sheriff, that's him right there. You know, this is an 80-year-old lady beat to death, left there with her sister. You know, frying, folks, frying." We didn't. He's in Hayes Prison in Chattooga right now. And the other side, the funny side of that, now, you know, that one still gets to me. That's the only one I've ever worked that really gets to me as a person. The other side, when we're going up to pick him up, the community over the years had given me a really fancy sheriff's badge with diamonds in it. And I was really proud of it. I thought it was something. You know, and the boy got caught. Gerald got identified in a paved station on the toll road in Kentucky. So we had to go through that same toll road. And I got there and I flipped out my badge. You know, I thought I was somebody. The lady said, "Sheriff, I'm sure that means something in Georgia, but it'd be $1.50." So I gave her $1.50. I told her why I was there. She said, "Yeah, I know." I said, "I'm the one who caught him." You know, you feel about that small when you do that, you know. But anyway, we got him back, sentenced him to death, and he finally got changed. Moving on, that's the day I decided I needed to do something else for a living. Because I went across the street, folks, to kill him. And that wasn't my job. My job was not to catch him, execute him, and be the jury. My job was to catch him. And I was fortunate enough, got offered a job with the governor when he took office in '91, Governor Miller. Not here to talk about politics, just tell you who I went to work for. Ran GEMA for 12 years, did a lot of floods, tornadoes, hurricanes. Also was lucky enough, or unlucky enough, whatever way you look at it, to be put in charge of the Olympics in 1995 when they were coming to Georgia. Which, what that amounted to, we created, with an executive order, created a new state agency called State Olympic Law Enforcement Command to run security for the Olympics, for the state part of it, not to take anything away from the local government. Wound up with about 30,000 people working for that agency. We built it from scratch for the Olympics. Had 197 countries, over 11,000 athletes, 32 million spectators, and 2 bombings. kind of fast forward on that. And with all the venues and stuff around over the state and the one in Tennessee, we had security, mix of state and local law enforcement. Centennial Park, where the explosion was, the Olympic Organizing Committee wouldn't let us put any visible security there. It was open to the public. So we all pretty well knew if we was going to have trouble, it would be there. And it was. It was 1:24 on Friday morning when the bomb went off. We had 124 people hurt, 12 of my guys and gals. You know, I happened to be at work, I was at the office. And, you know, you get the privilege of waking the governor, 2 United States senators up and the president and say, you know, we had an explosion, and told them about it. And we went from there and closed it down for 3 days, brought in security, brought in 750 more deputies. But we'd exhausted all the state resources. We didn't have any more people to bring. I called some sheriff buddies and got 750 deputies and 4 sheriffs to come manage those deputies. Put them in Centennial Park, opened it back up in 3 days. I went in to tell the governor, I said, Governor, we've got it secured. We can open it back up now. He said, how secure is it? I said, it's as secure as I can make it. I don't know how secure that is, but we can't make it any more secure. He said, okay, tomorrow at 10 o'clock, Billy Payne and I, talking about himself, and you are going out there to open it back up. And I said, why am I going? He said, I want to know how secure you think this thing is. So 3 of us went out, they talked, and I stood behind the bush hoping it wouldn't go off. And moving on from there, you know, the tornadoes and the floods in South Georgia were horrible. 1994 floods. I know I skipped over those, I'm sorry. I'm trying to do this all out of memory. Where we had 55 counties devastated, millions and millions and millions of dollars worth of damage. 300 and some odd caskets came out of the ground around Montezuma and Albany with the rivers. Some of them actually popped open, the remains popped out. So we had to reinter those and identify them and do all that sort of stuff. Then shortly after that, in 2003, I left. Let me back up. In the fall of 2002, a little event up in Walker County called a crematory. Most of you may have remembered the crematory. It's kind of an unusual event, to say the least. Got there, Sheriff Wilson called me that night at home, and like I say, I live in Somerville, so I went on up to Walker County. And we wound up finding, I think it was 337 bodies, I may be wrong, 330 something bodies, just in every form you could think of. Some of them were in what you refer to as a pole barn on the farm. Some of them were laying on the ground in a hole where they'd been dug with a backhoe. Some were just laying there. Some of them were in old abandoned cars. So we proceeded to try to figure out why, and set up a morgue and all that sort of stuff to identify the bodies and recover them and deal with the families. They were supposed to be cremating the families, and a lot of the families that got it earned back, but you could have had, you know, some of them had bodies, remains in it, some had horse manure, some had concrete and just dirt. So we had to analyze all that. The crime lab did. This was a joint effort, folks. None of this did I do by myself. I'm just happened to be the one standing here talking to you about it. It took men and women of all sorts, shapes, sizes, and everything else to make any of this happen. Please remember that. We got all but around 70 of them identified and returned back to their families. Some of the families of their bodies that we did not identify, because we were doing DNA testing on the family members along with their remains. Some of them refused to give us a DNA sample of the live the families. They said they didn't want the government to have it, so there's no way we could identify the remains. So we buried those individual graves at a cemetery in North Walker County. The guy was arrested, charged with some misdemeanors, and served about 10 years. I think he's out now, living back somewhere around in Walker County. So that was kind of the end of that, and then I went into private business with a company out of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, doing consulting on Homeland Security and emergency management. And I've done a good bit of stuff on the Texas border, some on the imagined earthquake zone up and down the Mississippi River, and a lot of them, Superstorm Sandy hit New York, and some in California on some other stuff. That's not near as exciting as some of the others because it's more, not as much hands-on. Didn't see any blood and guts. That's kind of my life in 15 minutes. I've been very fortunate, very fortunate. You know, you've always heard it takes a community to raise a kid. Mine's a little bit different. It took a county to raise a kid. You know, I was telling somebody at lunch, I actually honestly started in a 2-room school with outdoor plumbing. Wasn't uphill both ways, just uphill one way. But, you know, and somebody asked me, and I'll quit here in just a second, why I wrote this. It's about the people. It's not about me. It's about the men and women, both the good ones and the bad ones. We're all living this world together. There's 3 reasons I wrote it. And one of them certainly wasn't to make money, because that certainly hadn't worked. One was so my daughter would have some idea later on what I did, and my granddaughter. But mostly so the kids in rural Georgia, in particular northwest rural Georgia, can understand there's an opportunity out there. If you work hard, play your cards right, and have a little bit of luck, you don't have to do just what everybody expects you to do. You can do some unordinary things. It's been a great opportunity to do that, and I could not have done it without a tremendous amount of support, not only in Chattooga, but this part of the state and several governors. And I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I'll be glad to try to answer any questions you have. I know I rambled a lot. It's hard to keep it all in order. My notes didn't help me a lot. But thank you for allowing me to come, Mr. President. I appreciate it. By the way, I do have a few books outside for sale if you want to buy one. Have any questions?
Any questions for Gary?
I just got a comment. I think you make Buford Pusser look like a slacker.
Well, I don't know about that. It's a different time, I guess. Might have had a few Buford Pusser stories, but somebody asked me not long ago, you going to write another one? The rest of them need to go to my grave with me. Thank you, folks. I enjoyed it.
Gary,
Yes, sir.
we talked about this before we went up there, and feel free to look around the room. Have you arrested anyone?
No, that was one of the main questions I got in Chattooga when I first came out with. Somebody come up and say, I want to buy a book. I said, okay, why? And because I didn't think this thing would do very well. It has been very, very lucky. But I said, well, I want to see if my family's in it. One quick story, this lady came up and asked that question. I said, no. She said, is my husband in it? And I said, no, your husband's not in it, but your daddy and your brother is. Thanks, sir.
Thank you, Sheriff McConnell, and thank you for coming and sharing your stories. And everyone, the book is available.